Hi again. Let's continue our look at Plato's Phaedo. So we introduced it just briefly before, talked about some of the characters and the setting. And this video will be about the first, what I'm calling the first discussion. So we can think of the Phaedo generally as two discussions. There's one discussion at the beginning that we'll talk about now, where Plato or Socrates argues that death is a blessing for the philosopher. And he says this in response to the surprise he gets from his friends that he's not upset at all that he's about to die. And then the second part, which is sort of follows from this part, because somebody raises an objection to this, saying, well, okay, I can see why what you're saying might have some point, which we'll see in a moment what he's trying to say. But your hope for death being a blessing is got to rest on some clear knowledge about whether there will be life after death. And so this discussion sets up that discussion, and that's the discussion that I think is the main discussion of the Phaedo. Okay? But let's back up and let's look at this one first. So death is a blessing for a philosopher. It's kind of a weird point. But Socrates says, and these are quotes, then he or any man who has the spirit of philosophy will be willing to die, but he will not take his own life, for that is held to be unlawful. So Socrates is sitting here in the middle, where he's opposed to suicide, and we'll see in a moment why he's opposed to suicide. But he's not opposed to dying. He thinks that dying is a blessing. Dying is a good thing. Dying is going to help. And he thinks because of his view about why dying is going to help, he has hope that once dead, he will actually be better off. He will actually be able to understand things much better than he's ever understood them before. So as we'll see, this has to do with his view about the body being a hindrance. First of all, so what is his argument for why suicide is wrong? Well, as he says here, there is a doctrine whispered in secret that man is a prisoner who has no right to open the door and run away. This is a great mystery, which I do not quite understand, yet I too believe that the gods are our guardians and that we are a possession of theirs. Then, if we look at the matter thus, there may be reason in saying that a man should wait and not take his own life until God summons him, as he is now summoning me. Yes, Socrates, says Thebes, there seems to be truth in what you said. Okay, so the argument follows. I mean, if there's a God and we are God's possessions and God doesn't allow us or would be upset with us mistreating his possessions, and generally you would think that that makes a good reason for why suicide would be wrong. And again, I think this is meant, the important thing is to see it. Thebes says he agrees with this. So this is just tossed out. It's not meant to be a discussion starter. He even calls it a great mystery, which I do not quite understand, as if to put off. I don't want to argue about this. Okay? I think suicide is wrong. I think I have a religious reason for it. There certainly could be, and I think are, better reasons to oppose suicide than this. This basically comes down to God says, okay? And it says because you're mistreating God's possessions. But there may be other possessions. So I'm not going to get too much into this, just to point out that this is Socrates' reason why suicide is wrong. But why would death be a blessing? Okay, so Thebes continues on there saying, well, how can you reconcile this seemingly true belief that God is our guardian, we are his possessions, with a willingness to die, which we were just now attributing to the philosopher? And this gets into Socrates' famous argument about the body. Okay, I deem the true votary of philosophy is likely to be misunderstood by other men. They do not perceive that he is always pursuing death and dying, and if this be so, and he has had the desire of death all his life long, why, when his time comes, should he repine at that which he has always been pursuing and desiring? It's a little bit windy out there. I hope you can still hear me well. So philosophy, it's a weird discipline. It's not what people would find just another run-of-the-mill thing. It's misunderstood. Okay? So, of course, if a philosopher is pursuing death and dying, then of course he should not get afraid of it when his time comes. Okay? And why would a philosopher be pursuing death and dying? Well, this has to do with the body. So here's a representative quote, and then we'll try to sum up some of the things that Socrates says about the body. Let me just make myself a little smaller here. Okay, so the body, he says, is a source of endless trouble to us by reason of the mere requirement of food. So it seems to suggest that just the fact that we have to eat once in a while, we have to stop doing philosophy. It is liable also to diseases which overtake and impede us in the search after true being. It fills us full of loves and lusts and fears and fancies of all kinds and endless foolery, and in fact, as men say, takes away from us the power of thinking at all. Whence come wars and fightings and factions? Whence but from the blood and lusts of the body? Wars are occasioned by the love of money, and money has to be acquired for the sake and in the service of the body. And by reason of all these impediments, we have no time to give to philosophy. And last and worst of all, even if we are at leisure and betake ourselves to some speculation, the body is always breaking in upon us, causing turmoil and confusion in our inquiries, and so amazing us that we are prevented from seeing the truth. It has been proved to us by experience that if we would have pure knowledge of anything, we must be quit of the body. The soul inner self must behold things in themselves, and then we shall attain the wisdom which we desire, of which we say that we are lovers, not while we live, but after death. So Socrates is saying at least two things. One thing is the body, in very many ways, gets in the way, stops us, or at least doesn't help us from seeing the truth. So it's kind of this dichotomy between body and soul. And so the body's getting in the way. Like he said earlier, we are prisoners in this body. And the second point he's making is because of our knowledge of this, that gives us hope that there is a better life, the life when we get rid of this body. Now, I don't know if you think that argument follows. I don't think it's a very strong argument. And I think this point about the body is a little bit overblown. Okay, is it the body? Is the body this thing, or is it not both body and soul that, gets, to blame a disease on the body or to blame lusts on the body? Isn't that both body and soul working together? So he might be over emphasizing this. Okay, but as far as the point goes, he seems to be making 4 points. The body is a source of inclinations and desires that thwart the pursuit of wisdom if we don't bring them under control. But even some we can't simply get rid of. I mean, we got to eat. We got to sleep. Okay? Bodily senses do not help and can even hinder the pursuit of wisdom. So Socrates sees wisdom as an intellectual, spiritual thing. Okay? You can't see or hear an idea. You can only think it. Care for bodily needs takes time away from the pursuit of wisdom. Here I get the picture that, I got to go have some dinner because I'm too hungry, or I got to go exercise for half an hour and I can't think. And I can't do philosophy, which first of all seems just wrong. You can do philosophy while you're eating, while you're exercising. And then finally the body becomes diseased and deteriorates with age, again detracting from the search for wisdom. So, some of these things are correct. Whether these things actually stop or not a problem, okay? But it is a negative view of the body, okay? And so I wanted to give you at least a kind of a sense of an alternative here. So man, this is from a quote from C.S. Lewis, man has held 3 views of his body. First, there is that of those ascetic pagans who called it a prison or a tomb of the soul, and of Christians like Fisher, who I'm not sure who that is, to whom it was a sack of dung, food for worms, filthy, shameful, a source of nothing but temptation to bad men and humiliation to good ones. That would be Plato's view, too. So he's on that side. Then there are the neo-pagans, they seldom know Greek, the nudists, the sufferers from dark gods, to whom the body is glorious. And thirdly, we have the view which St. Francis expressed by calling his body brother ass. All three may be, I am not sure, defensible, but give me St. Francis for my money. Why does he like St. Francis better? Well, he says, ass is exquisitely right, because no one in his senses can either revere or hate a donkey. It is useful, sturdy, lazy, obstinate, patient, lovable, and infuriating beast, deserving now a stick and now a carrot, both pathetically and absurdly beautiful. So the body. That's a kind of an interesting way to look at it. Body is neither good nor bad, depending on the situation, and then it becomes good or becomes bad, but it's neither both. It's like maybe St. Francis has a point. I don't know. I just offer that to you as another alternative, so not to take this one as the only way of thinking about it. Okay, so the final point is that the point here that this reflection on the body should give a philosopher hope. True philosophers are always occupied in the practice of dying, wherefore also to them, least of all men, death is death terrible. Look at the matter thus. If they have been in every way the enemies of the body and are wanting to be alone with the soul, then this desire of theirs is granted. How inconsistent would they be if they trembled and repined, instead of rejoicing at their departure to that place where when they arrived they hoped to gain that which in life they desired, and this was wisdom, and at the same time be rid of the company of their enemy. Many a man has been willing to go to the world below, animated by the hope of seeing there an earthly love, or wife, or son, and conversing with them. And what will he who is a true lover of wisdom, and is strongly persuaded in like manner that only in the world below he can worthily enjoy her, still repine at death? Will he not depart with joy? Okay, so whatever your ultimate view about his view of the body, Socrates thinks, Plato thinks that this understanding of the body shows us that there's got to be more to life, that our desire for wisdom, which can only be fully satisfied when we're dead, and note there's a kind of a Christian overtone here too, which we'll see in St. Thomas, which not exactly the same point, but a similar sort of point, is proof that there is more after life and there is life after death. And that's maybe the more key point to hold on to here. Okay, whether that is that a proof or is that more like a strong feeling? This is one of the themes that I want to develop as we move along. What kind of certainty does reason actually give us about this? Okay, I'm looking at the time. We're into 13 minutes, so I think this is time to wrap this one up and move on to the next one. We'll see you shortly.